the midst of a huge transformation where our peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, she, her, and hers, and I'm the Partnerships and Community Manager here at AllVoices. Today, I am very, very excited to welcome our next guest onto the show, Sarah Kiernan. She is the VP of People and Talent at solidcore. Sarah, thank you so much for being here. If you want to share a little bit about yourself, including your pronouns, and also when you were younger, do you remember how you answered the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me, Christina. So I'm Sarah Kiernan. I'm she, her, hers, and as you said, VP of Talent and People for solidcore. When I was growing up, I wanted to be a lot of things. I was a very, I like to say spunky instead of rambunctious child, but was very active. And I think if you asked me when I was younger, I wanted to be a dancer or an actor or something very dramatic. And later in life, I think started answering with a writer. I always loved writing. So I think a writer was my most common answer of what I wanted to be when I grew up.
Incredible. And now you're kind of designing these incredible kind of spaces and people and kind of all of these strategies. You fast forward to now, I always like to ask kind of the why and how you think your personal journey has really led you up until this point to lead the people and talent function, but also specifically at solidcore.
Sure. Yeah. It's interesting because I can tie everything back to even when I was young as a child. Both of my parents are entrepreneurs, multiple time entrepreneurs. So have always since I've known them, which is my whole life, owned their own businesses. So my mother has gone through a transformation and owned a couple of hers. My father pretty consistently owned one business, though he was always in direct partnership with my mother and hers. And so I really grew up early on with that mindset of work was not something that was separate from life. I used to joke and say the men who worked for my father painting houses would be the guys picking me up from school some days because
Yeah.
that's how my parents had to operate, or just not really that line of between professional and personal. So I grew up with that entrepreneurial spirit of you just create and make things happen. My brothers are both Broadway actors, and so they are also entrepreneurial in their own spirit. They've always worked for themselves as well, and so that kind of early childhood developed into a career in the arts and arts administration, and so used my passion for other people's creativity and artistry, including my parents. Right, even anything entrepreneurial is creative and their own artistry, I like to say, even if it's painting houses or cooking food, which are what my both of my parents finished their careers doing. And so really taking my skill, which was honing those talents for other people and putting real structure and balance and leadership behind other people's vision. So that started through arts administration, and then on a whim kind of transitioned to fitness, which truth be told, is really not that different than theater and the arts as well. And right up until what I'm doing now, still really using my talent at making people the best version of themselves, and really using that to hone leadership in entrepreneurs.
I love that. It's so important to have those kind of models of entrepreneurial spirit. And it sounds like your
Mhm,
family was definitely a main source of kind of inspiration and you're carving your own
mhm,
path right now as well. I know
mhm.
for a lot of kind of folks, there's so many, especially in the people and talent space, you're working with so many different teams that are across different cities, especially with solidcore. I know you're wearing your LA sweater right now. The team is expanding.
Yeah,
Um,
January 22nd.
I love it. I love it. I want to check out the studio. How do you intentionally build company culture with studio, team members who are across different cities, as well as the corporate team as well?
Sure. I think, I thought about this a lot, and really company culture, as really comes from the people building up. You can't set or prescribe a company culture. It is like the collective being of all the people who are in it. And we have a really interesting company culture because, as you said, we're so geographically diverse,
Yeah.
and those areas in themselves are so different from each other. We have major cities, we have kind of the Midwest, we have the Dakotas, which there's not a lot of the fitness in those areas, and we have the South. And so I think what is unique and like blends our culture separately, and the unifying force throughout our culture is that we truly allow people to show up as their most authentic self. You know, we, in any of our cultures, any of our communities, there's no desire to have someone be a work version of themselves and, in a home version of themselves. I don't think anyone who works for our company feels that when they're at work, they have to show up differently than they would show up to their family or their friends. So I think there's, at the core of our culture is an authenticity, which is a huge word that gets used a lot. But I think solid core, truly every single person is so authentic to themselves, right? With a respect and understanding for everybody else's authenticity. And that's really truly the binding force of our culture here at Solid Core.
Yeah, you want people to show up authentically and be their best selves so they can do their best work and kind of be the best team member that they can as well. And part of that too, especially because the nature of Solid Core's mission and the work that you do is really living a healthy lifestyle. I know with the new year coming up, so many people
Mhm.
really focus on that too, whether it's their kind of physical and mental health too. But I definitely wanted to ask, how does kind of Solid Core uniquely support the physical and mental well-being of your team?
Sure. Well, the physicals, it's super easy for us, right? So it happens to be very easy for us to support our team members' physical health. Obviously, our team members can all drop into any solid core. So essentially taking solid core for free at any point across the fleet. Also, most of our spaces have partnerships with other fitness studios. So for example, here in DC, the best benefit that we offer to our team members is the opportunity to attend fitness places across the board. So we have partnerships with SoulCycle, Berries, Y7. Well, Y7 is not in DC, but 305. So we have partnerships with all of these fitness places so that our team is not just at Solid Core, but they have a really huge variety of places where they can focus on their physical well-being, the recovery. And aside from just offering the opportunity to go, we really make space for it. So in here in DC, in the HQ office, it'll be 12 o'clock and someone, usually me, will stand up and say, does anyone want to take class? And a big group of people will just walk over to our 14th Street studio and hop into class. Or, on Fridays at 12:30, we used to always, as a team, go to a Soul Cycle class together. So we really make space in the middle of the day to take that break, sweat it out, come back new. There's never this is only a before or after work situation. So the physical is easy. Mental well-being in 2021 is a harder thing to accomplish for any team. For us, it's just making sure that we offer really comprehensive benefits that offer a plethora of mental wellness options, which we do, and looking in 2022 to increasing those options even more.
Yeah, I love that. I didn't know about the partnerships. I go to all of
Yeah.
those classes as
Yeah.
well, and personally, know that solid core is definitely a huge workout for me, which is great. And I think having the opportunity to do that in the middle of the day or whenever you feel like you are energized to do it, and come back and really feel like you can get those creative juices flowing, you can again do your best work, is really important. And you're doing it with your team members as well. And then the other side
It's
of that,
bonding.
yeah, exactly. It's bonding. It's just like you're doing something good for yourself as well. It's like a net positive, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted
Sure.
to also ask too. I'm sure that there are some folks who are thinking, they're in the studio, they are fantastic instructors, and they want to kind of move into corporate roles, perhaps. Are there kind of pathways available for internal mobility as well at SolidCore?
Yeah, but so internal mobility is something we take super seriously. We have really junior team members for the most part, people who are at the earlier or maybe early to mid stages of their career. So obviously, pathway to growth is one of the most important things to our team members. The only challenge we face as far as moving into HQ is that because, as you mentioned, we are scattered across the United States, our HQ is in DC. So obviously, it takes someone who wants to relocate to DC. For the people who are in DC, we have a pretty high growth pattern for them to move into corporate roles. We've seen a huge amount of our team members out in the field move into corporate roles, and we've even, had some team members relocate from other parts of the country to DC for a corporate role. So I think when we talk about mobility, it can't be prescriptive for every company of like, oh, you can come to corporate. That just doesn't work all the time. For an example, in our company, and so with our company, what we do is we think about ways to increase growth, even if you stay right where you are. So really taking the opportunity for a head coach, community manager in a certain region to lean in and support someone newer. right? So they could support someone else. We give a lot of development opportunities for people to lead projects, a lot of project-based leadership. So, for example, we have very talented head coach community managers who also have an interest in our retail department or our marketing department. And a lot of those people have taken on extra kind of stretch projects, as we would call them. And it's an opportunity for more compensation. Also, they can remotely join our team and do some remote project work to grow their skills and understanding. So that's mobility in and of itself without a kind of traditional job title change or step up into another part of the company.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also important to create those kind of opportunities, that kind of stretch assignments, the opportunity to grow in your role if you don't want to move to a major city or if you don't want to move kind of to DC as well and you still want to be part of the community too. It sounds like there are a ton of resources for that as well. Um, Over the past year or two, we've seen that a lot of, team members and employees across the kind of world and also just in different companies, they have kind of feedback around changing processes and everybody is going through kind of something different. And I wanted to ask you too, how you see kind of employee feedback management as a really important tool of building, this culture of trust and listening and how you see this manifesting at Solid Core as a company overall.
So at solidcore, we have a unique culture where 80% of our population actually teach solidcore classes. And so with solidcore classes, it's really easy for us to look at measurable things to give feedback on. So the style of the class, the levels of the microphone, whether or not the science was accurate or not, and what they were expressing to their team members. So, and it's not only easier to give feedback to our team members on things like the way they coach their class, it's easier to receive. I myself am a coach. And so when the person who does my evaluation says to me, hi, you had them lift their feet off this thing, and that is not a move that is good or supportive for their body, it's easy for me to say, oh, yep, you're correct. I did that wrong, or I understood that wrong. Like, I can correct that for my next class. And it's a really easy thing to process that type of feedback. To tell somebody on a leadership perspective that they are not being well received by team members is a lot more challenging. So I think we're unique in that part of our feedback is easy, tangible, measurable, and goes over incredibly well with our team members. But on the other hand, it is a challenge translating that feedback into the feedback that's more challenging when it comes to leadership, when it comes to the way that people react to feedback, and the things that are harder to control. So I think what I, as a people leader, am trying to do is make sure that we're building that culture of trust. So the trust comes before the feedback. So the trust is that we are coaching all of our leaders that when anything should come up in the moment that we know would require greater feedback later, that they're being transparent and honest about those things in the moment with their team members. That way, when feedback does have to happen or any sort of discipline might have to happen, that there's a level of trust because it's been discussed, right? So really focusing, especially this year and moving into next, our main focus when it comes to feedback is just making sure that there is that base level trust between all managers and employees so that when feedback is given or there's a need for movement and performance, everybody understands where that feedback is coming from and understands that the intention behind it is to continue to grow our team and grow our company and not based in anything else.
Absolutely. I think it comes down to, especially what you were talking about in terms of the trust comes before giving the feedback because the intention is to make kind of, yourself better, the other person better, and you're just trying to have that kind of two-way conversation as well to up level kind of everyone. And it's continually and intentionally built. And you want to work with people who will give you constructive feedback as well and kind of will take that time.
Yeah, and I think it's also important just to note that trust is built from a leadership perspective as well. So
Yeah.
the way that leadership communicates with a company can help level set that trust. So that way, as a leadership team, we're constantly communicating the where our business is at, where we need to be, where we're going, what our expectations of our teams are. And that way, when a team member might hear, hey, as you know, the company is trying to grow to this and the work that you're doing might not be on that same path getting us to here, they have that trust because they understand, they've heard the leadership team speak about where we need to go. So it doesn't feel like an arbitrary metric set by a manager or somebody across the company. They understand that they are all working towards these bigger visions that the leadership team has transparently shared with the entire company.
Absolutely. I think leadership, whether you're kind of a people manager and part of the executive team, I think that modeling behavior is really important as well to really establish that trust and lean into kind of empathetic leadership, leading with vulnerability too. And a lot of leaders are talking about, the phase that we're in around, or I shouldn't say phase, but the time period of the Great Resignation. And I want to
Mhm.
ask you as well, from your perspective, has this impacted, how you think about SolidCore's retention strategy? And I guess at the end of the day, becoming, an employer of choice is a continually changing workforce.
Yeah, we think about it a lot, obviously, and especially with the growth that SolidCore is seeing. A lot of other companies aren't experiencing our level of growth during a point where we're coming out of a very difficult period, but we are growing incredibly rapidly. So, and because of that, we are greatly affected by the Great Resignation and people trying to moving on, even location wise, right? And trying to figure out what's important to them, what they value. The largest members of our community are part-time employees as well. So it's harder to really work through retention for that population because as with any part-time job, there's a greater cycle, a greater level of turnover with roles like that. From a corporate level and a leadership level, for us, it was super important to focus on things that were going to really impact our team long term and not short term. I've seen a lot of leaders really focus on compensation or easy, quick fixes for the Great Resignation, offering large sign on bonuses, stay bonuses, retention bonuses. And for us, it was really about making those things happen that are going to keep people here 3 years from now, creating an incredible parental leave policy, which is something that we did in 2021, understanding that our team members, if they can see that they can grow their families here, as I'm growing mine right now, that they can grow their family members here, it's going to outweigh a lot of other things that might lead to turnover. And so, really focusing on parental leave. We just are launching our benefit season right now. We put an incredible amount of money and time and more resources into the benefits that we're offering our team. I can't share a lot of them yet. They're still finding out about them, but really added to our benefits package, made sure that we are being flexible and understanding with our parents, with our younger team members, giving a lot of space to our team members. So we really focused on the things that add more of a life quality value and less of a compensation value to people, because I feel like that will continue to churn people. There's always going to be someone who's finding 5,000 more dollars to give someone. So it's really about the things that you can't measure, which add to your happiness and success in other ways.
Absolutely. You want to think about the long-term kind of success and sustainability
Mhm.
of your program as well, and also kind of asking folks what they want and need. And I think family forming programs and just like supporting your family is so important, especially right now. And to your point too, of authentically showing up as your full self to work, and thinking about your life outside of work as well is so important. I know I've been asking kind of specific questions around your journey and solid course strategy, but in your kind of experience, I wanted to ask, even with the best of intentions, people make some mistakes, and that's okay. But what are some common mistakes you're seeing companies or leaders, for that matter, make in their people strategy? Of course, not at Solid Core, just out in the world, or it doesn't have to be anywhere you've worked previously either.
Sure. I think, and that's easy. I think in our day and age, we're so connected to other companies and other people. It's been a huge importance of mine to focus on other people leaders as well. So I do have good insight into what's happening. And I kind of hinted at it in the past question, but really people focusing on compensation and bonusing as ways of retention, as ways of hiring. And obviously, we're going through a huge period of inflation. So that is not to say that you don't have to put that great value into compensation and cost of living increases and bonuses and things like that. And we do take those super seriously at Solid Core. But I see people thinking that the answer is always comp. And it truly is not. Like, you could throw the most money at something and bring them into an environment where people are not going to want to stay, right? Because there's only so far you can go with elevating compensation. So I think that's a really huge hiring mistake. And I think something that I've seen pretty universally in my career, even prior to fitness or not, is the culture of untouchables. I think is a huge people strategy that has gone wrong for people, creating, kind of taking your top level of talent and treating them any differently than other talent in the company, and creating a culture where people feel like they cannot be replaced, or they are the only person who can do this work. It really stops people from developing the talent underneath these people. It stops succession planning. It stops people from really wanting to grow into these top talent leaders because they feel like they're on a different level, right? So really kind of focusing on creating a culture of people who aren't performance managed or led in the same way as the rest of the population has been kind of a misstep that I've seen currently, and I think fundamentally consistency and process, no matter if it's the CEO or a coordinator or a part-time coach, really treating everyone equitably, especially when it comes to performance management or growth career opportunities, is incredibly important.
Absolutely. Treating everyone equitably is really important. And again, it doesn't just happen. You're talking about being really intentional, operationalizing it. And I've definitely heard it, like, other companies as well, like the first 100 employees could be, the folks that are like the untouchable folks, or, the top talent as well. But you really need to foster that kind of sense of belonging with everyone too. I guess the flip side of that question too is, what are must-haves that people leaders need to incorporate to be successful in the future as well?
Yeah, it sounds so trite, but empathy, right? And especially in the world we live in right now, we wouldn't have survived COVID without a great deal of empathy from the people team and the leadership team in general. I think fundamentally, if you are going to lead a group of people, you have to really spend the time digging in deep to understanding what could be happening greater than just what's happening in your company that could be affecting the mindset and the work of the team that you're working with, right? Really hearing people and not pushing back on feedback, and not, being super receptive to hearing every single thing in the company. As a people leader, I receive a lot of feedback. Sometimes it's really difficult to hear, about people's experience. And certainly, I always lead with my best intentions and want people to think this is the greatest place to work. But sometimes people don't have a great experience. And it's really hard for me, as someone who knows my own intentions, to receive that someone might not be having a great experience. And so it's really important for people to really set their personal feelings aside, right? Take the personal out of it and be super receptive to hearing every single thing that people could be experiencing, and take everything that people say as truth, right? Whether or not you can action on it or not, to really understand that everybody's truth is some level of truth for you. So being empathetic to what people bring to the table, and also like understanding their truth is really important.
Absolutely. That empathy piece is really important. And when somebody is providing you feedback, it doesn't always mean they want you to respond with what you're going to do about it. And even if it's hard in the moment, active listening is so
Mhm,
important. Um,
mhm.
there's a lot that we kind of discussed in terms of, things that you're working on day to day as well, and kind of the big rocks and strategies of the organization. But kind of want to ask, what is taking up the most brain space in Sarah's mind right now? What's the next problem or situation you're currently trying to solve?
Ooh. Um, I mentioned before, solid course growth is
Yeah.
huge. So really trying to get ahead of it. I think it's easy. It's an easy way just to say, well, we grow so fast that the talent might not be where we need it to be, or we don't have the structures or processes in place. But I think that's always the case, right? And then nobody would ever grow, because no, it's almost like when they say having a baby, you're never ready to have a baby. You just have to have a baby, And so for me, it's thinking 5 steps ahead, right? So not even just what are the challenges with the growth that we're doing in this moment, but really thinking about team and structure, and how we make sure that our company's internal structure is built to receive all of the people coming in, coming in a big way. And also, I spend a lot of time reimagining the workplace, right? And how we operate. I think all people leaders are feeling that post COVID, and having people who have been working from home and felt successful doing that. We are back in office, but really, even our day-to-day practices are different, right? And the way that people collaborate with team members are different. So I spend a lot of time thinking about, if the way that we're doing things right now, kind of post COVID, is the way that we want to continue to do things. If we want to return to sort of a more normal way of being, which would have happened before COVID, or if we want to create a whole new evolution of what, a company looks like, how a company operates, how a company communicates. So really thinking, from that culture perspective of what team looks like, how communication works in a whole new world post this, digital workplace revolution that we've had, and also how we can keep up, with the growth that we're doing.
Absolutely. Reimagining, redesigning systems, thinking about,
Mhm.
if we want to keep business as usual or if we want to kind of mix things up as well, test different things. And I think the incredible challenge that we're presented with too leaves, a lot of room for opportunity too. And I know we have conversations on this podcast with a lot of folks who lead people and talent teams, but for folks who are not familiar with the role of, a vice president of people and talent, they don't work with
Mhm.
you regularly. What is, the most glamorous part of your job and what is the least glamorous part of your job? I know you've alluded to a couple of these, but what would your response be?
Yeah. Well, the least glamorous, for my job specifically, is also we're still in growth mode. So we are very much player coaching. So I tell people, on any given day, you could find me sitting in an 8-hour session with the leadership team, brainstorming the future of the company. And the next day, I'm, manually inputting payroll numbers to help out my
Yeah.
team, who might be backed up with things. So there's a lot of actual work that goes into HR as far as, and I always say the thing about HR and people is you can't get that stuff wrong, right? So you can't miss a number on a social security, you can't, miss a number on someone's paycheck. So really, the least glamorous part is just how nitty gritty the things that I oversee are, and how nitty gritty I still have to be in a lot of the details. And also, the least glamorous part will always be parting ways and moving on, or seeing people cycle through the company, having to be part of really difficult conversations that can change the course of someone's life is always going to be the most difficult part of any job, in the way that you're viewed out, in the world because of those decisions, is also pretty challenging. But really, the most glamorous, I think for me specifically, is also, the people role, especially at the vice president level. I get to hear every single thing that goes on with every department, right? I am a coach and a partner to marketing, to finance, to development, to operations. So I get to really understand the inner workings of every department, so I can lend my expertise to building their structure and org and helping them function as a department. But also I learn a lot. So I feel like I have an insight to running a business that not a lot of people get to have, and overall insight into the how every single piece of the business comes together. So it's really very glamorous when you think about it, that in one role you can have such a strong knowledge and understanding of how all the pieces come together, and also that I get to lend my voice to those pieces. So I get to feel on the daily basis that I've impacted not just myself and the work that I'm doing with my team, but that I have a strong impact on the teams around me, and that, can be pretty glamorous.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that in your role as well, I think a lot of folks see it as like a really strategic business role too. And just like people are one of the kind of most important factors of the business as well. And, I think it's a really important piece of SolidCore's mission too. Another thing that folks are continually talking about as well is continuous learning and professional development. And one of the kind of questions I want to ask before we kind of close out our conversation too is when your last learning moment was doing all of these projects and the things that you do on a daily basis.
I feel like I learn, every day something here, especially over the past, year and a half. I've never learned more than I have in the past year and a half, when you're faced with unexpected circumstances throughout the whole time. Last Friday, uh, I learned a lot actually, and we've been communicating a lot of things about the current OSHA mandate that's happening for across the country, which a lot of companies are affected by. And when you're communicating with a group of 700 people in one email, there's a lot of opportunity to communicate well or miss things. And so, really, after sending so much communication, taking a step back, hearing feedback from some people who didn't receive it the way that it could have been intended. So I think I had some great learning moments on even the way that I chose to communicate in that moment. And so, not to say we can't always have wins and misses, but just learning very quickly that even if three or four people receive something in a way that could have been different than the way it was intended to be sent, how you have to pivot a lot quicker than you thought. So it was a basic learning moment, but certainly one. And then, a big learning moment, I think, for solidcore in particular, we have a lot of opportunities to learn and develop and grow here. The biggest way for someone like me is I'm a solidcore coach now, and for the leadership team, we are all coaches. And I think we make sure that every single person who comes into HQ also knows how to coach solidcore. So I'd say the biggest learning moment that I had was when I went through coach training. And, I have a lot of opinions on how we build out the coach role, how we pay, how we think of their time, their hours, all of these things. And then for me to actually coach classes myself, which I do every week, I have a much better understanding of what our actual coaches do in a way that, even if I go to class 3 times a week, I would never understand from the other perspective of the challenges that are faced. So I think my big learning moment was it's not enough to be engaged. You have to do on all levels, right? And so I think becoming a coach and starting to coach classes myself was the greatest learning that I had in my career of really how to operate a business from here all the way up.
Absolutely. Learn by like doing and engaging, and being kind of that coach is so important. Sarah, is there anything that I either didn't ask that you want to share with folks who are listening, or a key takeaway you want to underscore for listeners that you hope they take with them after listening to our conversation today?
Yeah, I think really something that I'm focused on at solidcore, which I think I would encourage all other people leaders to continue to lean on, is to really focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion tactics, and not in a way that feels modern or feels like the right thing to do as a human, but really focusing on those tactics as a way to change the thinking of your mindset. Truly bringing in voices to your organization that don't historically exist is the only way to change thinking in general. And so for us at solidcore, it's bringing in people who have no knowledge of fitness, people who historically are not in our industry, which are people of color, people of an older generation, and really trying to infuse different voices into the work that we're doing. And on top of bringing them in and adding to the diversity lens, making sure that your team is built to support them, which is the inclusion lens, of course. So I think starting to rethink about diversity, equity, inclusion in a way that's bigger than this feels like the right thing to do as a human, and more along the lines of how are you making this place a better place to work for the entire company by the people that you're bringing in and the challenges and the new mindsets that you're letting your team explore is really truly the only way to continue to elevate as people leaders.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with you. You have to think about inclusion from a holistic mindset, no matter where you are in the company, no matter what your role is as well. And I think that, thinking about the specific industry that you're in too is like a great way, like a starting point to kind of where you can go from there, and all the opportunities that you have too. Sarah, I really enjoyed our conversation today. Thank you so much for being on Reimagining Company Culture.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. It was so great to connect.
Absolutely. And as a reminder for folks who are listening and AllVoices, we really believe in the power of employee feedback management as a requirement for the company to succeed on a whole. Have a good rest of your afternoon, everyone.